So in a typical, high-level T20 cricket match, you usually expect this battle of attrition, right?
Stretched over the full 40 overs, exactly.
Right. You expect the math of the game to sort of ebb and flow as two elite teams just trade blows. But what happens when one team completely short circuits that expectation?
Well, it gets interesting.
It gets wild because listen to this final statistic, because it's honestly the entire reason we are doing this today. Australia didn't just beat Bangladesh, they chased down the target with more than 10 overs remaining.
Wow.
Yeah, they essentially finished the game in half the allotted time, and by doing that, they just mathematically dominated the tournament's net run rate in the process.
I mean, it wasn't even a contest, really. It was a systemic dismantling. And to do that in half the time required isn't just about, hitting the ball harder. It is about flawless, almost suffocating execution from the very first ball bowled.
Exactly. So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a really fascinating piece of sports journalism. It's an article titled Australian Pace and Vol Power Overwhelm Bangladesh. And we are extracting the core mechanics of how a team actually builds that kind of suffocating pressure.
All right, pulling back the curtain a bit.
Exactly. Our mission is to unpack this specific women's T20 match to understand how a dominant strategy is executed, even when, and this is key, a team is heavily depleted by injuries.
Yeah, that context changes everything.
It really does. We're going to translate the tactics, the physics of the pitch, and the psychology of a collapse, all specifically curated for you, the listener. Because you don't need to be a cricket historian to grasp this. We are going to look under the hood of how elite teams operate. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand this victory, we have to start with the physical environment.
Absolutely.
Because you can't understand the strategy without understanding the actual dirt it was played on.
Yeah, the pitch at Headingley. This is a crucial starting point.
Yeah.
Because Headingley has historically been this paradise for bowlers who rely on swing and seam, meaning, bowlers who can make the ball deviate in the air or off the ground.
Right.
But the source material describes the specific morning of this match in, well, very evocative terms. It was cool, it was heavily overcast, with a sun that was, as the text puts it, hesitant to rise.
Hesitant to rise. I love that phrasing. And because of that atmospheric heaviness, the pitch was doing what cricket analysts call nibbling about for the seamers.
Yeah, the dreaded nibble.
Right, but let's break that down immediately because it's a brilliant phrase, but it can sound like just impenetrable jargon to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
What physically happens when a pitch is nibbling about?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it's a beautifully descriptive term for a very hostile physical reality. When you have a cool, overcast morning, moisture actually remains trapped in the air and in the turf itself. So the grass on the pitch might be just slightly damp.
Oh.
Now, when a fast bowler delivers that hard leather ball at 70 or 80 miles an hour, the seam of the ball hits that moisture on the turf.
And it doesn't just go straight.
Exactly. Instead of skidding through in a perfectly straight, predictable line, the moisture and the seam interact to create friction. The ball deviates. It might, dart an inch to the left or an inch to the right in a completely unpredictable manner right after it bounces. That's the nibble.
Which, that fundamentally breaks the basic contract of batting, right? You train your whole life to track a sphere traveling at you at high speeds.
Yeah, thousands of hours of practice.
Right, you calculate the trajectory, you plant your feet, but if the pitch is nibbling, that calculation is just worthless. It's like sitting down for a game of chess, and right after the opening handshake, you realize the physical squares on the board are randomly shifting underneath your pieces.
That is exactly the psychological toll it takes. You can no longer trust your eyes or your muscle memory. And this is precisely where Australia's opening bowler, Kim Garth, just weaponized that environment.
She really did.
Yeah, she didn't try to overpower the batters with pure speed. She just hit the right spots on that damp pitch and let the nibble do the heavy lifting.
The text notes, she took 2 early wickets while giving up just 18 runs. And the specific dismissals really highlight what you just said about, muscle memory betraying the batters.
Yes, perfect examples.
First, you have Dilara Akhtar, who the article notes tried to swipe across the line, and then Huari Festudis, who had just played brilliantly in a previous match against the Netherlands. By the way, she was beaten by a ball that simply straightened up on her as she tried to play it to the leg side.
Yeah, and if we look closely at those 2 dismissals, they show us the 2 very different ways a shifting pitch destroys a batter. Dilara Akhtar swiping across the line is, Well, it's a symptom of pure panic.
Just swinging wildly.
Yeah, basically. When the ball is moving unpredictably off the pitch, tripping to swing your bat horizontally across its path is mathematically a terrible gamble. You are just hoping your bat happens to intersect with the ball's random deviation.
Right, it's a lottery.
But Warrior Faradis is the opposite. She didn't panic. She was undone by the subtlety of the physics. She expected the ball to continue on its natural angle. She played a technically correct defensive shot for that angle.
But the pitch betrayed her.
Exactly. The friction on the pitch caused the ball to straighten just a fraction of an inch off the seam. And that fraction is all it takes.
Wow. So Garth establishes this chaotic, shifting baseline. She puts Bangladesh on their back foot from literally the second over of the game. But the source material shows us that Australia didn't just rely on her to do the job. The real nightmare for Bangladesh was what happened after Garth's initial spell.
The depth.
Yeah, the depth of Australia's bowling roster meant there was absolutely zero room to breathe.
Right. They transitioned from the chaos of the pitch to the chaos of variety.
Yeah.
It created this rotating puzzle.
Let's walk through this because this section of the text is really dense with technical terms, and we need to unpack how this variety physically works for you listening. We have the legendary Elise Perry. She bowled 3 overs in a T20 international for the first time since January 2024.
A huge return.
Yeah. The text highlights that she took 2 wickets for 14 runs, including and here's the jargon, a nipbacker that pinned Shorna Akhtar leg before wicket, or LBW. Okay, please translate that for us. What is a nipbacker and why does it lead to an LBW?
Sure. So a nipbacker is a specific type of delivery where the bowler uses the seam of the ball to make it angle sharply inward, nipping back toward the batter right after it bounces.
Oh, so it cuts in.
Right. It's incredibly difficult to face because it looks like it's going wide, tempting the batter to, leave it alone or play a loose shot, and then it suddenly cuts back toward their body. Very. Now, leg before wicket, or LBW, is a fundamental rule in cricket. Simply put, you cannot use your body as a shield to protect the stumps. If the umpire determines that a ball was on a direct trajectory to hit the wooden stumps, but it hit the batter's leg pads instead, the batter is out.
So Perry bowls a ball that looks safe. It sharply cuts inward the nipbacker and strikes Shorna Akhtar on the leg. And because it was going to hit the stumps, she's trapped. She's out LBW.
Exactly. It's a highly skilled piece of fast bowling that uses the geometry of the pitch against the batter.
And it doesn't stop there. The text then introduces Sophie Molyneux, who also takes 2 for 14. But her impact is completely different. The article notes she had her first wicket rescued by the DRS, and she took a deft catch at short cover to help Perry get a wicket. Again, let's decode the mechanics here. What is DRS?
So DRS stands for the Decision Review System. It is the technological safety net of international cricket. Sometimes the human umpire on the field makes a mistake. Maybe they think an LBW shout was missing the stumps. The DRS allows the fielding captain to challenge that call using ball tracking cameras and microphones to detect the faintest edge of the bat.
Wait, microphones?
Yeah, they literally use highly sensitive audio to hear if the ball scraped the bat. So Molyneux used the technology to prove her delivery was, in fact, going to hit the stumps, overturning the human error.
Man, it's like a coach's challenge in American football or tennis, but with millimeter-perfect ball tracking physics. And what about that short cover catch? What is that telling us about the Australian strategy?
Well, short cover is a fielding position located relatively close to the batter on the offside of the side the batter is facing. Putting a fielder there is an aggressive, suffocating move.
Then getting right in their face.
Yeah, exactly. It's designed to cut off the batter's ability to just gently push the ball away for a quick, low-risk run. By Molyneux taking a deft diving catch there off Perry's bowling, it shows the Australian team is operating as a perfectly synchronized unit. The bowler creates the pressure, and the fielders are positioned perfectly to spring the trap.
Okay, so we have Garth's seam movement, Perry's nip backers, Molyneux's accuracy and fielding. And then the text notes Australia brings in leg spinners Georgia Wareham and Alana King to share 4 overs, followed by Megan Shutt bowling in-swingers, which is when aerodynamics make the ball curve inward while it's still in the air.
Right.
But, as I was reading the sequence in the source, I had a massive strategic question. I actually have to push back on the Australian captain's decision-making here.
Oh, really? Where do you see a flaw?
Well, the text explicitly points out that the physical environment at Headingley, the overcast sky, the cool air, the damp pitch, was tailor-made for talented swing bowler Nicola Carey. The article literally says she would have loved these conditions, yet she didn't bowl a single over. She stayed on the bench. If the environment is absolutely perfect for a specific, highly skilled tool in your toolbox, why on earth would you leave that tool in the shed? Doesn't that contradict the idea of flawlessly executing a strategy?
It's a brilliant observation, but it actually reveals the deepest layer of Australia's dominance. What looks like a strategic error on paper is actually a deliberate psychological tactic. The text refers to Australia having infinite possibilities.
I don't buy that. How does ignoring your best situational weapon equal infinite possibilities?
Because in elite sports, predictability is your greatest vulnerability. Think about the Bangladesh locker room before the match. They know the pitch is damp. They know the sky is overcast.
Yeah.
They're mentally bracing themselves for Nicola Carey to come out and bowl relentless, curving swing deliveries. They have spent hours preparing for that exact rhythm. But the Australian captain decides not to give them what they prepared for.
She changes the test entirely.
Yes. Instead of a steady diet of swing bowling, she brings in Sophie Molyneux to alternate pace and spin. She deploys the leg spinners, Wareham and King. She brings back Perry. Think of it like trying to dance to a piece of music, but the DJ keeps changing the time signature mid-beat.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Right. You prepare for a waltz, you set your feet for a waltz, and suddenly a heavy techno beat drops. A fast bowler is hurling the ball at you at 75 miles an hour, making it bounce sharply. The very next over, a leg spinner is tossing the ball up at 50 miles an hour, making it grip the turf and spin violently to the side.
I see. The physical difference in how a batter must react to those two vastly different styles back to back is jarring. You literally have to change your stance, your timing, your entire cognitive approach every 6 deliveries.
Exactly. Having a deep roster isn't just about injury replacement. It allows a team to be structurally unpredictable. If you are a Bangladesh batter, your brain never gets to settle into a rhythm. Australia won the middle overs not just by physically overpowering the batters, but by forcing them into a state of constant exhausting calculation.
Which naturally brings us to the human toll of this tactic. Having established how Australia executed this unpredictable rotating puzzle, the source material forces us to look at the catastrophic effect it had on the Bangladesh lineup. We move from the brilliance of the bowling to the psychology of a collapse.
And the numbers from this phase of the game are a stark reflection of that cognitive exhaustion.
They are brutal. By the 8th over, Bangladesh had slumped to 27 for 5. Let's just hold on that. 27 runs, and half their entire team is gone.
Unbelievable pressure.
Now, Captain Nigar Sultana and Ritu Moni managed to put together a partnership of 32 runs. The text notes this essentially stopped them from being entirely bowled out for an embarrassing total. Nigar top scored with 27 off 47 balls. But here is the statistic that defines the entire deep dive for me.
Let's hear it.
In a format that is fundamentally designed for explosive, entertaining hitting, the entire Bangladesh team managed only 6 boundaries in their full 20 overs. They finished at a meager 77 for 8. 6 boundaries in 120 legal deliveries.
To put that in perspective, going 120 balls with only 6 boundaries at the international level is almost mathematically improbable unless the team is entirely neutralized.
I want to read a direct quote from the source, from the Bangladesh captain, Nigar Sultana, speaking after the game. She said simply, "We are better than that."
That is a heartbreaking quote.
It really is. You can hear the heavy frustration. It's the agony of knowing your own potential, knowing your muscle memory is sound, but being so thoroughly trapped by your opponent's tactics that you literally cannot execute a single aggressive stroke.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, let's explain why those boundaries completely dried up, because it connects directly back to that shifting time signature we talked about. Hitting a boundary, striking the ball hard enough to reach the edge of the field, requires a few physical prerequisites.
Right.
You need balanced footwork, you need a clear mind to commit to the shot, and you need to accurately anticipate the ball's trajectory.
All the things Australia actively dismantled.
Precisely. Surviving a relentless, multi-pronged attack drains a batter's cognitive energy. When your team is 27 for 5, the context of the game shifts. Every single ball feels like it carries the weight of the entire match. You aren't playing to score anymore, you're playing not to get out.
You retreat into pure survival mode. Your feet stop moving toward the pitch of the ball. You just poke at it defensively.
And you cannot hit a boundary by poking at the ball. The source text explicitly states that Bangladesh may regret not being a little bolder, but boldness requires a foundation of confidence. Australia spent the first 8 overs systematically liquidating that confidence. They didn't just restrict the scoring, they restricted the mindset. They made the physical boundary ropes feel like they were 100 miles away.
Which sets up the most staggering contrast of the entire match and really the final act of our deep dive. Because the narrative of the source material snaps from Bangladesh's suffocating, boundaryless struggle directly into Australia's explosive chase. And this contrast reveals the ultimate mechanism of Australia's dominance.
We shift from survival to absolute authority.
Enter Georgia Vole. While the entire Bangladesh squad scraped together 77 runs over 20 grueling overs, Vole came out to bat for Australia and smashed 45 not out.
Huh.
Here's the context that matters. It only took her 32 deliveries to hit 6 fours.
So she matched the boundary total of the entire Bangladesh innings in just a quarter of the deliveries.
Exactly. She also launched a massive 6 down the ground, meaning she hit it all the way over the boundary rope without it bouncing off the bowling of Marufa Akhtar.
What a hit.
Yeah, and the text makes a point to note that Vole was rebounding from a duck against South Africa. Just to quickly clarify the terminology for you listening, a duck simply means getting out for 0 runs.
Right.
So she goes from scoring 0 in her last game to completely taking the brakes off in this one. Marufa, by the way, bowled her 4 overs straight through and managed to take the only Australian wicket of the game, getting Beth Mooney caught by a diving Mooney.
It was a spectacular diving catch, but a very solitary moment of joy for Bangladesh out in the field.
Right, because the chase, as the article states, was a foregone conclusion. It just depended on how soon Australia would complete it. But here's where it gets really interesting. There is a missing piece to this puzzle that the source reveals right at the end, and it completely reframes everything we've just discussed.
Oh, the injuries.
Yes. You hear about this flawless bowling rotation, the suffocating fielding, the explosive batting from Vole, and you naturally assume Australia is operating at absolute peak 100% capacity. A fully stocked war machine.
But they weren't.
Not even close. The source reveals that due to an ankle strain for star player Ashley Gardner and a quad injury for Phoebe Litchfield, Australia only had 13 fit players to choose from before the beginning of the match.
Wow.
They were missing key personnel. They were essentially operating on a skeleton crew. So I need you to reconcile this for me. How does a team execute such a flawless, multifaceted strategy when they are missing the very stars that normally make that strategy work?
Well, this right here is the defining characteristic that separates good teams from historically great championship teams. A good team relies on its star players to carry the load and provide the spark. When those stars get injured, the system collapses.
The team loses its identity.
Exactly. A championship team, however, relies on a systemic standard. The standard of execution does not change just because the personnel does.
It's like an elite orchestra. It doesn't matter if the first chair violinist is out sick, the sheet music is the same, the conductor is the same, and the replacement violinist knows exactly how to play the symphony. The machine keeps running.
That is a perfect analogy. And you see that systemic standard in exactly how Georgia Vole approached her innings. The text notes a very specific, crucial detail about her batting. It says she took a few deliveries to adjust to the pitch's speed and to Marufa Akhtar's in-swinging deliveries before she started pounding the boundaries.
So she didn't just walk out there swinging wildly.
No, because mindless aggression is just as dangerous as panic. Vole's approach was calculated, clinical execution. She analyzed the environment, respected the physicality of the in-swing, calibrated her timing to the pitch, and then she struck.
Incredible discipline.
It shows a team-wide culture where every single player on that roster, from player number 1 down to player number 13, understands the assignment and possesses the emotional control to execute it.
It's the difference between relying on individual brilliance and relying on a collective operating system. And that brings us to the core takeaways of today's deep dive into this masterclass of a match. When we look at this overwhelming 9-wicket victory, the blueprint for executing under pressure is laid bare.
Yeah, it really is.
First, you have to read the conditions early and weaponize them, just like Kim Garth did when she used the damp pitch to make the ball nibble and destroy the batter's muscle memory. Second, you have to utilize unpredictability. The way Molyneux and the Australian captain constantly rotated their pace and spin bowlers created a shifting time signature that kept Bangladesh in a state of exhausting defensive calculation.
Right.
And finally, you have to execute with clinical control, taking a moment to assess the board before striking, exactly like Georgia Vole did. So what does this all mean?
Well, it is the trifecta of elite performance: adaptability, unpredictability, and systemic execution.
Right. So applying this directly to you, the listener, we've unpacked the physical weather conditions, the psychological warfare of the bowling changes, and the explosive batting finish. But as we wrap up this deep dive, there is one final, larger thread here that challenges how we traditionally think about resources and success.
Yeah, it's a thread regarding the paradox of choice. We discuss how Australia dominated completely while missing highly impactful players like Gardner and Litchfield. We praised their systemic standard, their ability to plug the holes in their 13-player roster. But I want to leave you with a slightly more provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
Sometimes, having endless options from Curacer, a fully fit squad of 15 world-class athletes, can actually muddy a captain's decision-making.
You overthink the matchups.
You try to be too clever with your substitutions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But when your resources are strictly limited by injury, your path becomes undeniable. You don't have the luxury of second-guessing. You have to use the exact tools you have left to their absolute maximum potential without hesitation. So, the question to consider in your own strategic endeavors is this. Does having fewer resources actually clarify your strategy? By eliminating the paradox of choice, does operating on a depleted squad actually force a more ruthless, focused, and ultimately successful execution?
That is a fascinating reframe. When you sit down to play and half your pieces are suddenly taken off the board before the game even starts, maybe that limitation is exactly what forces you to see the winning move. You stop worrying about what you could do and you just execute what you must do.
Well said.
That is all for today's deep dive. Keep adapting, keep analyzing the board in front of you, and we'll see you next time.